Welcome to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast that's all about energizing communities, advocating for change, and making a difference in the great state of Nebraska. We'll dive deep into the heart of Nebraska's progressive movement, exploring the stories, strategies, and initiatives that are shaping the political landscape. We're here to amplify the voices of candidates, local activists, and community leaders who are fighting for a more equitable, inclusive, and prosperous Nebraska. Swing Left Nebraska is your go-to resource for staying informed about key issues, upcoming elections, and how you can get involved. Whether you're a seasoned organizer, a concerned citizen, or someone who's looking to make a difference for the first time, we've got you covered. Get ready to be inspired, and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Welcome. I'm Leah. Thank you so much for showing up today. You could be doing so many other things with your time, but you chose to dedicate some minutes out of your day to unpack the unicameral with Cindy Maxwell-Ostdiek and me. This show is jam-packed with information about all that went down last week and what to expect this upcoming week. So let's do a show. Cindy, welcome back to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast. We have so much to get into. There's a lot that happened last week, and there's a lot that will be happening next week. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about Senator Blood's colon cancer bill that was up for floor debate last week. What can you tell our audience about that and where that's at right now?
Thanks so much for having me today. This last week and next are huge at the legislature. And that bill that was debated on the floor, Senator Blood was on the ball to bring this very important legislation. I didn't realize that it was a thing. And so it will definitely solve real expense for Nebraskans. And I hope that they pass it.
And what exactly will this bill do?
If I understand correctly, I might not have all the details, but when you go in for colonoscopy, and if the doctor finds any polyps or anything that they need to address right then, that would be the time to do it because you're already under, and it would be good to not have to come back for a second appointment. But it sounds like right now, regarding insurance and billing procedures, it's very expensive. So one of the things that she was trying to do is make sure that is folded into the actual procedure or appointment, that you would have these different codes so that you wouldn't have additional expense, because it's important, not just health wise, of course, but it's also saving money if you can not have to go through a second procedure and to address your potential either cancerous or precancerous issues.
Yeah, it's all
So
inclusive service. It would save you money and time. So you wouldn't have to go back for a second procedure, like you said. So
mhm.
yeah, go, Carol, go.
Yeah, and I was pleased to see people from both parties stand up and support this bill. So hopefully they can get that done.
We will keep our eyes and ears peeled on that bill and give you updates as they come. Now, moving on to Legislative Bill 857, that was introduced by State Senator George Duncan of Lincoln, would adopt the Nebraska Prenatal Plus program. It's similar to the one in Florida and Colorado. Under this bill, reimbursement could begin at about 6 months prior to birth. The HHS Service Committee adopted an amendment intended to tighten up definitions and significantly reduce a sizable fiscal note attached to the bill. LB 857 would apply to at risk mothers who are Medicaid recipients, but not mothers in the Children's Health Insurance Program. It would also reduce reimbursements to prenatal care, not postpartum care. In addition to the amendment, clarifies targeted case management as an air traffic controller working directly with expecting mothers, and sets a maximum reimbursement of 6 nutrition counseling visits. So that is a really no-brainer bill. I'm excited to see that move forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I watched a portion of that hearing, and I feel like this is very good legislation that would help not only set these mothers up for success while they're in pregnancy, but it also is so important for the health of the newborn as the child grows older. The impact is long term impact. So, yes, I hope that they pass that bill for sure.
Yes, me too. And then LB 178, introduced by State Senator Wishart, is a grant that would help provide childcare in nursing homes. Also a no-brainer, just makes sense. What are your thoughts on that one?
I am so excited about this bill. And Senator Wishart has created potential legislation that will have such an impact on these children, but also the residents who are living at these care facilities. And what she's proposing is to start up childcare within a nursing facility. We're in an emergency and we need childcare across the state. But it also would allow for the people who are living in these facilities to become involved with these children. And this is good for everybody. So I'm so excited about this bill. I hope they pass it for sure.
Yes, we will, as always, keep our eyes and ears peeled and keep you informed with any updates that come. A tense exchange over race, crime, and disparities in the criminal judicial system capped off an otherwise panel hearing Thursday on Nebraska's proposed Stand Your Ground law being considered by the Legislative Judiciary Committee. The proposal from Senator Brian Harted of Gering would give Nebraskans broad license to use force, including potentially deadly force, to defend themselves when they believe they are facing death, serious injury, kidnapping, or sexual assault. The bill, LB 1269, would remove the provision in current state law that renders deadly force unjustified when someone using such force can flee or hand over property with complete safety to avoid doing so. That's pretty intense.
Yes, I was watching that hearing and it was heartsick to listen to the testimony and Senator Hardin as he was speaking about this bill. We have good statute in place right now regarding the requirements for use of deadly force. It should not be loosened. If there's a need for deadly force, then I think most of us can see what that is, right? It's something that when it would come potentially in front of a jury, Nebraskans as neighbors would be able to decide, yes, this is something that was necessary. Loosing it as unnecessarily is dangerous. And the testifiers, including Senator Hardin, spoke specifically about Trayvon Martin during this hearing. And Senator McKinney, who was on judiciary, did push back about the misinformation that was shared about Trayvon Martin and whether or not the use of deadly force was appropriate. I really hope that they decline this bill and that we can move forward on other priorities for our state.
Yes, I agree. Now, another intense bill regarding guns was also up for debate. So that was 1389 Brewer's bill, arming school personnel. You had mentioned when we talked offline that there's three parts to this bill. So what can you tell the audience about this
Yes.
one?
I was there at the Capitol that day and I did not have a chance to testify on that bill. I was actually across the hall in a different hearing, but I saw Senator Brewer in the hallway and I did mention to him that I really appreciated one portion of the bill, which had to do with the specific mapping that could be available for emergency personnel, including the fire professionals spoke in support of that portion of the bill too, because that would give anyone the real specific, we're looking for this classroom or this specific door. This is the hallway you go down. That type of mapping, I think, is a good idea. And we should be doing that for the safety of our students and teachers, everyone within the schools. The other two parts of the bill, I could definitely have concerns about. And the one portion regarding the ability for off duty law enforcement to carry guns in schools, or I think military was included in that as well. We have current regulations, restrictions against that. And I know that there are strong arguments from the Western or rural parts of the state about how far the law enforcement might be from a school in a situation or an emergency. Now, if you're just talking about off duty law enforcement having the ability to carry their gun, it's still going to be random that they would be there at whatever time, or if it was at a sporting event or something like that. I know there's a lot of concern about that portion of the bill. And most of us are realizing that more guns are less safe. The last part of the bill, which I'm adamantly opposed to, would allow for the arming of school personnel. And the way this policy is put together is where I am most concerned. And that is that Senator Brewer is saying there are these various areas that would need to be regulated. And he lays those prescriptions out as far as what areas need to be regulated and then gives all of that authority to the local school boards to control. I'm for local control. However, I think that is very problematic that there are no minimum requirements as far as how these policies would be put in place for safety. So it would be ad hoc depending on what in McCook versus what is happening in Omaha versus what is happening in Wahoo. It just would depend on which school district you live in versus the safety procedures in place and requirements. I am adamantly opposed to that portion of the bill, and I hope that they do move forward with the portion of the bill regarding mapping. And we'll have to see how this plays out on the floor if they make some amendments and improvements to this bill, what actually passes, what moves forward.
Yes, we'll definitely have to keep our eyes on that and see what happens as it progresses. You also want to discuss the priority bill deadline coming up. What can you say about that?
For some people who haven't really followed the legislature closely, I learned that the priority bill designation is key for really deciding whether something could go forward or not. There are bills that are not prioritized that are passed in the legislature. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times, if they're non controversial, they could maybe be potentially folded up into a committee bill or is called consent calendar. There's really a limited amount of time in the session to do so much work. And so a lot of it comes down to prioritization and a literal prioritization, not just in the general planning sense, that each senator has the ability to designate one bill as their priority. Each committee can designate two, and then the speaker is allowed to prioritize up to 25. And the deadline coming up at the end of this next week will tell us what the senators and committees are prioritizing. And then after that process is completed, then the speaker takes up his priority process as well. And so I just looked at this the other day because I was trying to familiarize myself where we are at right now. And it looks like quite a few senators have put in their priorities. And there are one, two, three, four, both government, military, and veterans affairs priorities have been listed, one exec board, one general affair, one urban affairs. The speaker only has three priority bills designated so far by Senator Day regarding massage therapy practice, one Senator Brostar, genetic information privacy, and one for Senator Beatty regarding state Medicaid. There's a lot of prioritization still to go. And it's a fascinating thing to watch in the legislature. There's a lot of jockeying. Some senators prioritize other senators' bills. That leads me to talk about Senator Aguilar. He had prioritized Senator Day's bill regarding requiring the governor to help Nebraska participate in the summer EBT program. Those are the federal funds which would allow for EBT cards for students during the summertime when they're not able to receive their free and reduced lunch at school. And it's only $40 a month, but that $40 is really critical to these families. And when it's on an ABT card, then they can purchase the food they need when they need it. And basically, it's the convenience factor as well. There are some summer nutrition programs available for students that you would need to go on site to access. And that is very difficult because a lot of people just even are at work. And so they can't take their kids to go in and get a lunch. Or if you think the rural parts of the state, it's just such a long drive. And there are less of these summer sites available than previously. It's actually much lower number of places that you could go to access this food. So we need to make sure that we're helping parents to access the food they need when they need it for their children. And this $18 million that Nebraska has rejected to bring to our state is really just not good policy. Not only are we wanting kids to have enough food to eat, but it is an infusion of dollars to these communities. I feel like a lot of people are missing how the dollars get multiplied because it brings the money to the community, which these grocery stores, these convenience stores, these farmers markets, the various places that receive EBT payments, that is benefiting their profits and their ability to hire and expand or invest in their community. I just feel like this is something that the senators need to require the governor to do. They should do it quickly. The deadline has already passed at the federal level regarding these dollars, but it sounds like there's some potential flexibility on that. But the longer we wait, it could turn out to be like what Nebraska did when they made the mistake of not requesting the emergency housing assistance dollars in a timely manner. And we ended up receiving less funds than we normally could have originally received. I know a lot of people talk about how we don't want big government or we don't want to utilize services unnecessarily. We want to save tax dollars. These are tax dollars already spoken for. And you and I pay our taxes to the federal government, and those dollars should come back to our state. We don't want to send them to other states just simply because the governor thinks that these kids shouldn't have food to eat during the summer.
Got
So
it.
that's my comment about that. But it's really concerning. It's been in the newspaper that Senator Hansen, who's the chair of HHS, he has a bill this week coming up regarding SNAP benefits. It's 1381. I hope everyone takes a moment to go and fill out an online comment to not vote for 1381. It has to do with work requirements on SNAP and not accepting waivers or state level. Apparently, he wants to combine those two bills. This seems to be a pattern with Senator Hansen. We saw that last year when he took two bills, 574 and 626, regarding transgender healthcare ban and abortion ban. And he put those two things together because it would have kind of tipped the favor of the votes, depending on which particular bill a senator. Nebraska is very clear that we should have standalone legislation and Senator Hansen should not be trying to put these two bills together. They need to be clean and separate. Yes on LB 952 and no on LB 1381. This week was really a lot of focus on nutrition and food scarcity and trying to prevent hunger. And I was really excited when I was watching the floor debate the other morning when Senator Walls's bill came up with an amendment, LB 285. The amendment is the bill is regarding Nebraska Volunteer Service Commission, and the amendment to 285 will provide for expanding school lunch reimbursement. And there was a lot of debate on the floor back and forth. One of the things I was really pleased with is that Senator Linehan indicated support for it based on how it could be adjusted in the next round so that it won't impact TIOSA in a negative way. I hope they move forward with that. And please tell your senator to support LB 285.
Absolutely. Now, on February 14th, that's Wednesday, Valentine's Day, the legislators' government committee will hear testimony on LB 1211, which proposes even steeper rollbacks on early voting. LB 1211 aims to cut the number of days Nebraskans could cast early ballots by more than one third. So going from 35 days down to just 22. That's something to be paying attention to and make sure that you get your comments in as well, don't you think?
Oh my goodness, yes. This bill brought by Senator Hansen is very concerning. I don't understand why he would want to restrict the number of days for people to cast their ballot. He should be encouraging Nebraskans to vote. It is not only harmful because certain counties only do vote by mail, they have no in person voting unless you were to go to the actual courthouse. They don't have actual polls open on election day. The other difficulty with this is that it makes it hard for the Election Commission and Secretary of State to process all of the vote by mail ballots, especially including the restrictions and requirements with voter ID that's just been implemented. I know that there are Nebraskans across the state that really rely on vote by mail and taking their time to cast their ballot in a careful way and making sure they're doing their research. It seems to me that Senator Hansen should be trying to improve that process and start instead of restricting it. I know that people should definitely be putting in their online comments and say, no, do not implement this bill. Let's get the senators working on issues for our state that we really need their support. And not waste our time with trying to restrict voting.
Exactly, because this bill has the potential to negatively impact all Nebraskans, not just Democrats or Republicans or independents, all Nebraskans who choose to use vote by mail as their means and method of voting. There's nothing like being able to take your ballot and then taking the time to really do the research before you put that pen to paper for who you want to vote for and what ballot initiatives
Mhm.
you want to vote for as well.
We had vote by mail statewide during COVID. We had the highest turnout than we previously had regarding voting. That's a good thing. We should be wanting to encourage and expand on that, not restrict it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we will be paying close attention to that and provide you with updates as they come up. Another bill coming up on February 13th, that's Tuesday, LB 1330, would prohibit public educational institutions, university and colleges from taking certain actions relating to diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, including requiring DEI training for employees, utilizing DEI in hiring, and spending money on DEI programming staff. So now is the time to act. We must oppose LB 1330. You have till February 13th at 8 a.m. What a disgrace. Don't you agree?
It is, and it is very concerning that we have senators that want to roll the clock back instead of moving forward in our state. And when we talk about things like brain drain in Nebraska and the impacts education has on that, we really need to make sure that these senators are focusing on solutions instead of these extremist bills. I just hope that Nebraskans understand what these senators are trying to do is something that will not only impact our students in school right now, it impacts all of us when we start to lose more employees, lose more talented students that don't want to come to Nebraska for education or to stay after they get their degree. We don't want to move the clock back. We want to move forward with our state. We want to advance. We want to make sure we're attracting and keeping talent in our state, attracting businesses to our state. It's harmful that the senators would consider trying to make sure that people don't have this. We definitely need to get our online comments in on this and make sure the senators vote no. We don't want to move backwards in our state. We want to move forward and create a future for our growing families and businesses and students. Senator Pillen just had a press conference where he's going to offer free tuition, I think room and board maybe, and $5,000 to all students in the state who have a perfect ACT, which is great. I think it's amazing. And these students who get a perfect ACT should get as much as we can give them and help them, give them an incentive to stay in our state. Now, we need to be realistic. Those students are getting very similar offers or more from very prestigious schools across the country. It's very rare to get a perfect ACT. I wish that the senators and the governor were working to help make the environment and incentives best for all students in our state to stay, even the ones who might not go to school for a specific degree. But if they're working and getting steady grades, if they're working and performing adequately on any of these tests, we should be supporting them too. And these DEI policies and the other reasons where these senators are bringing up these culture war extremist bills, that is what is driving people away. It's not tax. I'm hoping that they can really see the big picture and try to turn this around because we have a net migration regarding people with degrees and certain professions in our state. And we need to make sure and turn that around because it is going to be something that will spiral. What are we doing to help retain all of the rest of the students that are considering whether they're going to go to school here or not? I know parents who are insisting that their children go out of state because they don't want their young female students to be here and have exposure where they potentially wouldn't be able to have an abortion if they were attacked. The reproductive rights that we've taken away in our state, all of the hateful legislation regarding LGBTQ and against trans Nebraskans, those are the types of things that really drive people away. We should be focusing on solutions. We need to focus on helping people to get education, expanding it. We need to help businesses to grow. We need childcare. We need mental health care. We need all of these various things. And they're not rolling up their sleeves and working on that. They want to try and attack diversity, equity, and inclusion. Really, this is not 1950. And if people think we want to go backwards and those were the quote unquote golden days, they weren't for everybody. And I would say, first off, these senators need to look in the mirror and try to open their eyes. They're representing all Nebraskans, not just the ones that look like them.
Now, Monday, so hopefully you are listening to this on Sunday so you can get your comments in on the period product bill. What number is that? Where can people find that? And what is that one all about, Cindy?
I am so excited about Senator Conrad's LB 1050. And it is to provide period products to middle and preschool students. This particular bill is so important because where they've implemented in other states, they've actually had a positive impact on absenteeism. I still remember and know what it's like to be surprised when you have your period and you don't have the supplies that you need. And for it to be happening with students, especially younger students in middle and high school, to have to go to the nurse's station to ask for products or to use the dispenser for pay. I didn't even realize it's usually 2 quarters now. You need 2 quarters. And who carries quarters in their pockets anymore? Who has pockets all the time, right?
Right.
It's really important that we provide these products where and when the students need them. And Senator Conrad's bill would actually provide that funding from the state level to the school districts. This is just excellent policy. I hope that they have a great hearing Monday. Get your comments in tomorrow morning by 8 and let these senators know that we want to prioritize something that will help students so that they can make sure and not miss school.
Exactly.
I wanted to make sure and mention, and this is regarding that particular HHS hearing last week, is that HHS was considering the appointment as a new CEO. Steve Corsi was appointed by the governor last late summer, early fall, and he has a troubling background anyway. And online with social media presence, he has had really disturbing things that he has liked and shared and commented and tweeted and whatnot, things that are very harmful when we talk about LGBTQ or trans Nebraskans, really difficult views that he was amplifying regarding race. And one of the things that happened in that committee hearing is that Senator Michaela Cavanaugh was bringing that up. And I think it's very important. His views regarding abortion, and he was talking about all sorts of things about Adam and Eve, and it was quite the hearing. He has very extreme religious views, and that is something that is everyone's right. But he is making decisions regarding the health and welfare of Nebraskans, and he needs to be able to separate his views from the actual work that he is completing on our behalf. And it's a very concerning thing that in Nebraska, the last few months, we've had no oversight from our inspector generals regarding health and welfare division and with like our youth YRTC programs. And the attorney general had put out an opinion that he didn't believe that the inspector general process through the legislature was appropriate. And so he has advised these divisions not to comply. And it's something that Senator Kavanaugh was saying is actually against the law. And this new CEO, Steve Corsi, got up and said that he was going to follow the recommendation from the attorney general, but the legislators are who created the laws. So I really hope that they resolve that issue. The other thing that was brought up that was very concerning is that when Steve Corsi completed his paperwork regarding the Nebraska Accountability and Disclosure Act, he did not disclose his work with a company called Epiphany. And that is a consulting type of company that the state of Nebraska has hired. Governor Pillen actually paid $10 million. It's a $10 million program, and it was prioritized as emergency funds. So it was not with a bid process. And it's really troubling that he didn't list that he worked with them really for days up before he was actually hired. So I just think there's a lot that needs to be looked into regarding this gentleman. And I hope that they see their way clear to decline his appointment and that we find someone that would be better deserving of Nebraskans' needs.
Cindy, you wanted to discuss some stuff regarding school funding.
Yes. I attended appropriations hearing this last week. Senator Linehan brought LB 1402 basically to try to bypass the process we implemented as citizens regarding repealing LB 753. This is to appropriate funding to these scholarship granting organizations, and that hearing was very difficult. I attended and wasn't able to see the whole thing, and I went back and watched. And the senators were very aggressive, and I would even say combative with their questions of people who came to testify. And I'm not saying that it isn't good that the senators would ask very important and hard questions, but it seemed to me that there was a behavior during that hearing that was harsh and something that really just isn't befitting of our legislature being partners with the second house and people coming to testify and share their views. The bill 1402 and this appropriation of funds intersects with the whole process last year to pass these public dollars for private schools. And Senator Linehan, of course, has been involved with the organization American Federation for Children, which was funding a lot of candidates who were elected last cycle to implement this program to divert our public dollars to private schools. But they also funded a campaign to try to prevent people from signing LB 753. The organization is called Keep Kids First. And it was really difficult this last summer to watch some of the behavior of these people who were hired. They're called blockers. And we had volunteers and teachers and parents. And I personally is someone who helped with circulating that petition. And we would have blockers come and definitely be aggressive. And even they were asked several times to leave wherever they were, like people called the police on. And there's been a lot of back and forth about whether the petition circulators had made mistakes whenever they might have been talking with voters about what was actually on the particular petition that they were citing. Or there were a lot of concerns about the misinformation from the campaign, Keep Kids First, coming from Senator Linehan and the American Federation for Children and all the funders with Betsy DeVos. The thing that I was very troubled by is that there were allegations of fraud that came up during that hearing. And one senator was talking about how there were like tapes of a circulator who had incorrectly talked about the details of the bill 753. But when everyone signs a petition, there's an actual object statement that must be read that each voter then would decide, yes, I want to get this on the ballot. That's all they're doing. They sign this petition to get it on the ballot so all Nebraska voters can decide. And if someone made a mistake in what they stated, it doesn't mean that the signature gathering was fraudulent. If there were people who were going out and not reading the object statement, or if they were misreading the object statement or somehow getting people's signature and not complying with that process, that's a whole different thing. We have not had any cases that the Secretary of State has brought regarding fraud. And I think he would if it had been a fraudulent process. So it was very disheartening to have the senators make these allegations. And I guess one of the things that it just really troubled me is that there were implications that the people that had circulated this petition or the people that came to testify the other day were lying. And it offends me greatly because if anyone wants to talk with me about what I experienced and witnessed, I had voters who were trying to sign the petition, and there were Kids First Nebraska blockers yelling at them, trying to convince them not to sign. And it was so aggressive. And the voter, in particular, one was at a farmer's market this summer. The voter said, please leave me alone. I'm trying to sign this. I came here specifically to sign. Her husband was upset as well. And these blockers were behaving in ways sometimes that were scaring voters and scaring petition circulators. And Senator Linehan is basically point blank saying that did not happen. And I do not lie. I witnessed it, and it is something that was very troubling. I am not saying that I think Senator Linehan wanted that to happen necessarily or was promoting it, but it did happen. And we need to make sure that we're not discounting the truth when we're talking about how it went last summer. I was so proud to be involved with that process. I saw teachers and parents and volunteers work through the heat and the long hours. And in 90 days, we gathered 117 plus signatures with voters saying we want to get this on the ballot in November to decide. There was a well-funded campaign for voters to take their signature off the actual petition. There were organizations that sent mailers and had ads and actually produced forms for Nebraskans to go through the whole process to have their signature removed. It is my understanding that there were very few that actually followed through on that process. When I testified in the hearing the other day, I did not say how many. I said that I thought there were very few or a small number. And I don't know if someone else had talked about it during the hearing, but Senator Linehan said that there had been a testifier that said there were only 20. That wasn't me. And I didn't hear anyone else say that number. But Senator Linehan went on to say that there were several hundred. And it is my understanding there were, I believe, less than 150 Nebraskans who had their signatures removed from that petition. It's their right. I totally think that it is their right for every Nebraskan to do that. But I think that we should all be honest when we're talking about these issues and not try to bring misinformation into the discussion. It's a very important discussion and we should just be sticking to the facts.
I agree. Facts are important. So thank you for bringing this up and discussing this with our audience. As
So,
we wrap up, is there any final words for the people? I know you wanted to mention the deadline, February
mhm,
15th, for people who are jumping into the race as incumbents. Can you discuss that
mhm.
briefly?
Yes, the deadline for incumbent filings for office is February 15th. And for new filers, people that are already not in office, that would be March 1st. So it's the clock is ticking. I hope people are considering running for these very important positions that we need filled at all levels of our government. Obviously, this is a presidential election year, and we have Congress, both Senate positions are up in Nebraska and half the legislature as well. But we have school board openings. We have openings at the local level that have impact on our daily lives. And we need people to step up and serve in these positions that really reflect what Nebraskans are working on for their neighbors. I hope that people are either considering themselves or talking with their family and friends to run. The deadline is fast approaching.
Awesome. Sydney, this has been an episode that is filled with lots of information. So we hope you're able to soak it all in. And we encourage you to keep paying attention as much as you can to the Nebraska Legislative Study Group YouTube channel so you can stay up to date with the hearings that are going on. But that's okay if you don't get to them because we will do our best to break down everything we can. But there is so much. So we're definitely going to miss some stuff. So we encourage you to use your eyes and ears as much as possible so that we can all join together and stay engaged, stay informed, and use our voices to push back against terrible legislation, but also use our voices to celebrate the wins and all the positive bills that are being proposed this year. Sydney, thank you again for your time. And with that, I look forward to connecting with you next week. Lots of happenings going on.
Thank you so much.
Today, we've unpacked some of the key legislative issues Nebraskans are facing, and we've explored strategies to keep the momentum going forward. Let's remember that change starts with us. It's our commitment to stay engaged, our leaving comments, contacting representatives, and our conversations that build the foundation for a more progressive and inclusive Nebraska. Don't forget to subscribe to the pod so you don't miss an episode. Keep your energies high and keep your focus sharp. Let's mobilize, let's take action, let's go.
Ready, set, go.